It's nuts, like seeing all of these comedians getting cancelled, bro. Like, but by Netflix, like Netflix taking down Chris Lilly's seasons and TV series because he's done like brown face in them, I think is bullshit for two reasons, right? Reason number one, I don't think you should be going through through fucking history and deleting stuff just because our standards change. I think that an appropriate response, maybe if you were going to fuck with stuff that had something that is offensive by our standards, is you do what Warner Brothers did. With old Looney Tunes cartoons, because they obviously had like hardcore, blatantly racist cartoons there, like undisputably, we made this because we think black people are lesser, like real racist cartoons, and instead of deleting them and denying that shit ever happened, which is a mistake because when you fucking deny history and stop learning it, you're doomed to repeat it, right? Very well known idea. That's why Holocaust museums exist, right? That's why we say lest we forget. That's why on 9/11 you say never forget, right? Because you don't want that shit to happen again, even though it was fucking horrific. You have to keep thinking about it, remembering it to stop it from happening again, because the people that did those terrible things are us. We're not different from them. They're humans. Hitler was a guy. He didn't have powers. He didn't have something mentally wrong with him. He just had hate in his heart. I think that's why people get so fucking scared about controversial opinions and terrible things and all this kind of shit. They want to get rid of it because they think it's, I don't know why they want to get rid of this shit. I understand getting rid of like pure racist, but getting rid of like shit that was created to entertain and not degrade races, basically, is my point. I think is silly. I think if you're going to modify it, what you should do is what Warner Brothers did. They took all their racist cartoons and shit. They didn't delete them. They didn't hide the fact that they made them. They said, this was made during this time period and people during these times thought this was acceptable. Us today, we know that it's not. We would never do this, but to deny it is to be doomed to repeat it. They had some warning really well worded like that, which was, this is terrible today. Back then, it was normal. We should know this to show that we progress and become better. I think maybe that's what they should do. Maybe to comedy that's offensive. But what the fuck is offensive? And I think the decision made by Netflix was so hollow because they knew about all this shit that Chris Lilly did for sure, because cunts tried to cancel him for it when they paid him millions of dollars to make a series for them only a couple of years ago. And everyone starts losing their mind going, oh, how could you fund this? Look at what he's done. And Netflix goes, yeah, we know he did all that shit. That's why we're giving him $1 million. We want him to do it for us. So now they're taking it off. It's fucking hollow. It's a money move. They don't give a fuck. The person who did that was not an artist, was not a comedian, didn't understand comedy. The person who did that was probably some PR executive, some cunt working in customer service. Oh, boss, a bunch of people are angry. We should take it down. It's fucking crazy. I think that with comedy, especially with comedy, you need to judge comedians on their intent, not your interpretation of what they said. It's like, I mean, it's like personal life. Sometimes you will accidentally say something that really offends someone and hurts their feelings personally, but then you go, no, that's not what I meant. I meant this. And then the person goes, oh, well, as long as you meant that and not this. And you go, yeah, I meant this, not that. And then they go, oh, okay, well, then I guess it's fine. I think a lot of the time you can do that with comedy. Because, you know, there's a lot of argument to be made that I think I wouldn't do blackface today, personally, as a comedian. I wouldn't do it today because I can't think of a way to make it funny, is my view of it. But that's for me, you know. And I feel like you probably shouldn't be doing blackface. But to me, blackface is like dressing up as a race and going, look at me, I'm inferior. Like that, like the traditional meaning of blackface. It was just dressing up as black people and going, oh, look, we're so dumb. Whereas if you're doing a character or inventing a character and wearing makeup to look like that character, it's, I don't know, it's definitely not as bad as that. I don't think I would do it, but I wouldn't say that no one should ever do it, because you never know how someone can do it. I mean, Tropic Thunder, I think, is a perfect example of someone doing blackface in a way that I don't think is offensive at all, because Robert Downey Jr. plays an actor who is playing a black guy wearing blackface, and that creates a conversation with an actual black guy about why blackface is wrong and why this guy is racist. So is Robert Downey Jr. racist for doing that, or is the character that Robert is playing racist? Do you see what I mean? If no one can play a character that plays somebody in blackface to talk about the ethics of blackface, how the fuck are you supposed to address it in comedy? And now a bunch of people are going to take it out of context. People are like, well, Lewis Spears reckons you can only discuss blackface while you're in blackface. That's not what I'm saying. Imagine that, though, a fucking debate over whether or not we should allow blackface, but every participant has to be wearing blackface. That's not what I'm saying, but that could be a funny sketch. You know what I mean? I don't know. There's an argument to be made about the Chris Lilly shit, especially, I'm talking around the time when he did Summer Heights High. That was like fucking, I mean, I was in like grade 6, I think, when that was coming out. It was like a decade ago at least, right? More than a decade ago, when he was playing his Jonah character, who was Tongan and like an Islander kid. You could make an argument that he was employing a fuckload of Islander kids to be his friends. His show was almost much more representative than anything else that was made in Australia at that time in terms of getting Islander kids, Tongan kids into fucking TV and doing stuff. And he, I don't know, from when I watched it, and memory might be hazy, he fucking addressed like issues that those communities faced. He had every single person that was not him was actually from that community. He clearly did his research about their cultural practices and shit like that. So his intent was not racist. I understand people thinking the execution was, maybe, but his intent was absolutely not to be racist, because if his intent was to, do brownface and make Islanders look terrible because he hated them, I don't think he would hire them and give them money and do his research and try to make all of those characters human. I think he would just make them look fucking stupid while he like mimicked them or aped them, I don't think the intent there is racist. It's just such shallow fighting perceived racism. Meanwhile, actually racist people go under the radar. I think Aboriginal guy in Australia, Briggs, said something really good about it. He just added Netflix on Twitter, and he said something along the lines of, in reference to getting Chris Lilly cancelled, he's like, this doesn't actually do anything. This is hollow. If you actually want to incite change and do something productive to fight racism, why don't you make a show about this community group and hire people from this community? If you're just fucking cancelling cunts because white people were offended on their behalf, you're doing nothing. So I don't know. I just think it's silly going back and canceling shit. If you can't joke about racism, if you can't talk about race with comedy at all, how the fuck are you supposed to discuss it unless you're creating a documentary about the Holocaust? Like, really, there are so many ways to communicate in art that isn't that is just boring. So many ways of communication. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say comedy communicates better than any other art form if you're trying to convey a message. So if you're trying to convey a message whether it's, standing against racism, whether it's making fun of racists, or whether it's just making fun of everybody and introducing the audience to different culture groups and their issues and making fun of them, and doing so proves that they are just like us, like most comedies do, right? That is almost an incredibly effective tool against racism. If you start putting all of these fucking communities into boxes and say, oh, they're so fragile, you can never joke about them. One, people will never hear about them, so they'll never understand maybe why they have issues, or they'll never understand what it's like to be them, because they don't. If someone doesn't like watching the news and doesn't like watching documentary, but they love watching comedy, but comedians cannot talk about this group, how the fuck is this person even going to understand anything about that group? Banning one art style from talking about a bunch of different groups is fucking ridiculous. It just makes them other, and that's why I've always said with this podcast, when you come to my shows, everyone's going to get it. If you're in a fucking wheelchair, and I know you're going to be in the front row because that's where the disabled access is, you're going to fucking get it, bro. And that's because I know that you're a fucking human and you can stand on your own 2 feet. Poor choice of words.